This book came out last year. It's a book about and a collection of the life and work of underground cartoonist Willie Murphy, who's shown here on the cover, sitting, I think, probably in Central Park. And Willie was an underground cartoonist who did some of the funniest work, in my opinion, to be found in underground comics and in comics of the 20th century. High praise indeed, I know, but I really think so. And I consider him to be working in the same vein as the screwball cartoonist that I wrote about in my book. You know, he's a kind of a modern Milk Gross in some ways. Like I said, he passed away at an early age. This is my Willie Murphy collection, and it's not that I haven't tried to collect him. It's just that there's not much out. He did have stuff in Arcade. I have those, and some other comics. But for the most part, if you kind of look around, you know, you're going to end up maybe with 10 undergrounds that have Willie Murphy in them. This is Flamed Out Funnies #2, which came out in 1976. And I'm going to read to you from the inside back cover, which explains that this is a collection put together posthumously after Willie had died by his friends. Flamed Out Funnies #1, Willie Murphy put out. So, when Willie Murphy died in San Francisco on March 2nd, 1976, from a severe case of pneumonia, Willie was 39 years old at the time of his death, and many of his fellow cartoonists felt he was just reaching the peak of his abilities. His last 2 years were spent drawing solely for publication, and his work has appeared most recently in Arcade and the National Lampoon. At the time of his death, he was also working on Give Me Liberty, a revised history of the American Revolution, which, by the way, is one of my favorite comics. Gilbert Shelton and Ted Richards also worked on that, so it was a collaboration. It came out in 1976 during the bicentennial. Oh, hell, I should just do a video on that one. Before becoming a cartoonist, Willie spent 8 years working as a copywriter for 2 major advertising agencies in New York City. This book is a collection of comic strips drawn by Willie over the last 7 years and was edited by Ted Richards with the help of Gilbert Shelton. So picture this, okay? There's this guy working in these Madison Avenue advertising agencies wearing the suit and the tie and a big deal. And it's this button-down, you know, business culture. And he's a creative. And he's working on all these commercial accounts and everything. And he tunes in and drops out. Drops acid. He never really was a big part of that scene. But he left it. He left, you know, he made apparently really good money. But he left all that, moved to San Francisco, and became an underground cartoonist, you know, not making much money at all. And he, I guess he really liked the party scene. And he really liked to, well, he took a lot of drugs. And he kind of ruined his health. And he died at age 39. So that's the sad part. Now, as I said, there's not a whole lot of his material that got published, and I was hoping there was more that wasn't published or had, you know, you'll find this with cartoonists that they'll have done some other body of work that nobody knows about, and that gets unsurfaced, you know, uncovered and rediscovered. I was hoping that would be the case with Willie Murphy. So when this book came out, I was really excited. I was like, oh boy, more Willie Murphy to read. I mean, I've been loving this guy since I was a teenager. So I was ready for this, and I asked for this book for Christmas and got it. I was disappointed, I gotta say. disappointed at first because the book appears to mostly just reprint stories that I already have. Stories that can be found in comics that are still easily obtainable. They're not too expensive, with a few exceptions, a couple of exceptions. But you know, like this comic, you can probably get on eBay for about $5. And here's, you know, the whole comic isn't even reprinted in this book. So, you know, I was like, oh shoot, you know, this is a lot of money to pay for something I already have. But first off, consider this, okay? Look at this. The size, it's larger. It's bigger. That's neat. And here's the original publication of this story from San Francisco Comic Book number 4. This is the original publication, and this is the reprint. You can see it's bigger, and it's not on yellowed paper. I kind of tune out how yellow the paper is on my old comics. But when you compare it to this is by far the superior version, the superior printing of these comics. And that's the case for all this stuff in here. So you have basically the definitive Willie Murphy collection in terms of the print quality and the readability and the accessibility. Now, what's so special about Willie Murphy? Well, just take a look at this one page, okay? This one blew my mind when I was a teenager and read it for the first time. I'd never seen a comic that did this. It's playing with the formal elements in the same way that Art Spiegelman did in the Undergrounds at the same time, and Bill Griffith and artists like that. Willie Murphy was on their level, and he was super funny. So this is a comic called Automatic Transmission, and what it is, imagine like a movie camera fixed in the rear of a car, and it doesn't move. So we have a static camera for 8 panels, okay? And what we have in each panel are 4 people. 2 in the front and 2 in the back. So they're having a conversation in the car. Brilliant. So already, you know, you have this very formal structure. And then you start reading this. Remember, this is a guy who was a copywriter. So this is beautifully written. And each one of them, you know, you're thinking at first they're having a conversation with each other. But as it goes on, they're not. They're all sort of lost in their own head, and they're all talking about 4 different things. And that's part of the joke. They're, you know, they're probably stoned or, you know, riding some kind of trip, even if it's just a ego trip. I love the pacing. So you have talking, no talking, just one word. Lots of talking. Isn't that great? No talking. Someone says one thing. No talking. Someone says they all have something to say. I mean, it's just absolutely brilliant. So this is what you find in his comics. Let me see if I can find some of the Arnold Peck, the Human Wreck pages. Arnold Peck was sort of a, what would be the word, surrogate figure for Willie Murphy. Yeah, here we go. So some of the Arnold Peck stories were done in an unusual format of long rectangular panels. And it serves the purpose of the story because it's a scene happening on a street. And it's kind of like a Tati movie in that there are multiple jokes happening at the same time. And so what you choose to focus on first and secondarily and tertiary, that's all makes up that reading experience or that viewing experience in the case of Tati at that time, but then the next time you come to it, you might go into a different pattern. So it's a slightly different experience every time you come and absorb this comic. I have to be careful what I show you because of YouTube, and these comics, they're nowhere near as transgressive as a lot of the undergrounds, and they're very gentle. They're the humor is outrageous and wildly funny, but they're not. Willie Murphy wasn't interested in just kind of like some of the underground artists seem to be like, hey, I can draw naked people, and I can draw genitalia now, and I can depict scenes of dropping acid and what that's like. That really wasn't his bag. What he was really into was capturing something about people. Like, think about that automatic transmission strip. It's really talking about how it's hard for us to connect. We're trying. Here I am talking, and for all I know, I'm talking to myself. Nobody, it's possible nobody will even watch this video, or a few people will, or probably what's going to happen is people will start it. I'm already into 11 minutes here, and, I get the analyses of the YouTube videos, and it's like people spend about a minute watching my stuff. I don't get that. But, so, we're all just kind of talking to ourselves and in big echo chambers, and there's not a lot of connecting happening, and I think that's partly what he was working for. But talk about connecting, okay? The first part of this book, and let me say, I was disappointed at first, but then as I started reading the introductory text, which comprises about the first, I want to say 25-30% of the book, I began to realize what a special book this is. So it's put together by 3 people. So let me identify these: Nikki Michaels, Ted Richards, and Mark Bernstein. Sorry, Mark. So Ted Richards catches my eye right away because he was also an underground cartoonist at the same time as Willie Murphy. And check this out. Here's a comic they did together. They worked together. So Ted Richards, not only knew Willie Murphy, he worked with him. And I believe all 3 of these individuals knew Willie Murphy. There's something really cool on page 57 here. This is a map showing how a whole bunch of famous cartoonists who worked in the underground lived in the same San Francisco neighborhood in 1972, 1973. Roger and Michelle Brand, Rory Hayes, Bill Griffith and Diane Newman, Ted and Tia Richards, the San Francisco Comic Book Company, the great bookstore that carried undergrounds, where it was run by Gary Arlington, was in that neighborhood. Trina Robbins, Jay Kinney, Leslie Kerbaga, Art Spiegelman, who was rooming with Justin Green, Sherry Flanagan, and Bobby London at the time. Kim Deitch, am I saying his name right? I never know if it's Deitch or Deitch. Somebody leave me a note if you know. Willie Murphy was rooming with Ted Richards and Larry Todd and S. Clay Wilson. So all these folks were within walking distance of each other, working together, influencing each other, and sort of part of a little mini movement. It would be fascinating to collect this stuff, all the comics that were produced by these folks during that time in one book, and consider it and look at how they may have influenced each other and where they went on, in their careers. Ted Richards went into advertising, which is interesting because Willie came from advertising. But this introductory material is primo quality because it's written by people that knew the artist. Now, you have people like me who will write an account of an artist's life and work or examine part of it, and I don't know them. I never knew them, so I'm going off of secondary stuff or primary material. I have to interpret the primary sources, but they went and gathered material from people who knew him, including this right here. This is actually probably one of the standout pieces in the whole book. This is so when Willie worked in those 8 years in advertising, this guy also worked there, and they were great friends, and there's no qualms about talking about the drugs they did together. But Philip Fenty, and his memoir here captures a time and a place in New York, and something really special about Willie Murphy, and what an unusual person he was, and what a unique view of life he had, and how he developed into a cartoonist and found his voice in it. The other great piece in here, and there are many, is by Ted Richards, which is a memory of his memories of working with Willie. So great stuff in the front, and pristine, wonderful reproductions, and every once in a while you get something rare that you hadn't seen or didn't know about. Most of it is stuff you've probably already seen. A lot of this stuff I can't really show you. There's a few pages from Willie's sketchbooks, and then in the back of the book, in the the gallery of his work, it's mostly black and white, but some of the stuff is in color. So check this out. Okay, I mean, this is like Mad Magazine. The Wiper. You know what that is? That's a parody. Okay, it's a parody of a comic strip, or a comic story, I should say, called The Viper. There were 3 Viper stories, and they were done by Art Spiegelman. I can't show them to you here because they are extremely transgressive and kind of shocking. Yeah, it's probably stuff Art would like to have maybe forgotten, but those stories appeared in Underground Comics, so everybody was aware that's Art's character, right? So here is Willie not doing a mad style parody of mainstream comics. He did those too, by the way. They're in here. They're wonderful. But he's doing Art Spiegelman, and Art Spiegelman's The Viper was a parody, of course, of pulp heroes like The Shadow, or The Spirit. And so it's a parody of a parody, which is so wonderful, and it's really funny, and it's really well done. Anyway, you get these. You get a color section in the back. You're going to get some of these wonderful covers reproduced, and just all in all, a treasure of a book. By the time I had read it cover to cover, I felt like I knew so much more about a cartoonist whose work I have enjoyed for decades, and who died way too young. Really get the sense that there was so much more to come from him, so much more he could have done. It's ironic that he named his own comic Flamed Out Funnies, because he flamed out. But he did leave a lasting legacy, and this stuff is funny today because, yeah, it is a little topical. It does remind you of, the 70s and the drug culture and all the stuff that they were concerned with at that time, anti-war and the women's movement and civil rights movement and stuff like that. But ultimately, what Willie Murphy was working with was human nature. Observing human nature and showing it back to us so that we could laugh at ourselves. What a gift. Thank you, Willie Murphy. Thank you to the 3 authors who put this together and to Fantagraphics Underground for publishing it.